All right. Hello, my name is Peter Murphy Lewis. I'm the host of LTC Heroes, and we are live at Ohio Healthcare Association. Today I'm joined with Beth Septer. She's the Director of Business Development at Continuing Healthcare Solutions. Beth, welcome to the program.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Beth, I love coming to conventions. This is the first time I've come to the Ohio convention.
Okay.
What I love about the conventions is hearing the passion from long-term care leaders. The way that I like to dive into it, I'm going to start it off with you, is
Sure.
What's your initiation story? Do you remember the first day you stepped inside of a community? Do you remember when you fell in love with seniors in the U.S.? Tell me your story.
I do. So, gosh, my journey it started really in college. I had absolutely no idea what I wanted to do, to be quite honest with you. So I flipped through the manual with all the degrees, and I landed on the one that had no math. So I thought, I can do this. And it was leisure studies. So I entered into the School of Fine and Professional Arts with a degree in leisure studies and a minor in psychology. That took me to Copley Health Center, which is located in Fair Lawn, Ohio, where I was doing my practicum to be an activity coordinator / activity director. So I started there as a resident care assistant in the assisted living part of the facility. And to be honest with you, thinking about my first day, I was excited. I was going to save the world, right? Like I was not out of school, but in school, getting ready to start my career. And I thought, I can save the world. I can change the world. Like I can do this. And from there, I fell in love with the idea that people needed me. They needed me for everything in their life. And that became a badge of honor. And looking back, I didn't think about it like that at that moment. But as I've grown into my profession, that's what my first moment of long-term care looked like. That's what it meant to me.
There was a parallel story that I heard from a gentleman in Leading Age, Georgia, and he said there was a snow day where everything was canceled, and he'd worked at a retail store, and he was sledding with his kids, and he says, nobody needs me at my company. I want to go work in long-term care. I'm glad you shared that.
It's so true. And, those who don't work in our industry, they appreciate what we do. But the level of true understanding of what it means to show up is somebody's life.
So where I want to pause on that kind of answer is when you started to realize it, because you didn't realize it then.
I didn't.
Sometimes we end up being lifers in long-term care, and we look back like, oh, I was a lifer.
Yeah.
At some point, were you able to start to express that, or is that the first time you've expressed it? When did you start to articulate that you realized that this was becoming part of your DNA?
It hasn't happened. It didn't happen just recently. It's something that I acknowledged as I worked through the various positions in long-term care. So as most who enter long-term care, it's this rapid fire progression of one job to the next, to the next, to the next. When you show up, when you believe and you're passionate and your supervisor and your bosses see that, okay, this gal, this guy, they're here every day. They're bringing passion, they're bringing life. You begin to experience new opportunities. And so I worked through activities, STNA, through social services, marketing, and then, of course, administrator and now director of business development. So I would say it was probably around the time where I was working for Extendicare, and I began to be a part of these meetings, right? When you reach a level where you have an office and a title, you attend meetings. And it was then that I realized, looking around the room, wow, like I'm a part of something really, really spectacular here. And the foundation, the grounding of that was, if I don't show up to work, somebody's life is on the line. That's how I think we should all look at long-term care, post-acute space, regardless of your title. Your hands, your heart, your eyes, your ears are required for somebody's life.
I'm going to ask you about a favorite memory that you might have. And it might either be with one of your peers when you're in STNA, or maybe an RN who overlooked you, or with a resident. I know when I did my clinicals, I can remember the very first thing that Robert said to me at 5:30 in the morning. He said, Peter, this job's really easy if you care about people. If you don't care about people, get out of here. Now hurry up and follow me.
So true.
He ran so fast.
Right. You know, the memory that sticks like glue to my mind, I will never forget this. And it was when I worked at Copley Health Center, and I was taking care of a gentleman, and he refused to call me Beth. He would only call me Bethel. He was Jewish, and Bethel was the name that he assigned to me. Well, through my journey with him, I became like his daughter. He looked at me like a family member because I took the time to love him during care. I took the time to listen to him. He stuttered his words. He was very slow moving, very arthritic, and he had pain with every breath. And so I knew with him, I had to slow down, pause, let him direct me. And he refused to let anybody else give him a whirlpool. That was what he looked forward to. So every night on my shift, I gave him a whirlpool. He was waiting for me. His family wrapped their arms around me as well. And I, to this day, will never forget how that man made me feel by just showing me the same kind of love he would show his real family, but I reciprocated that too. That is the foundation of what we do. I can see his face. I can see him looking at me, waiting for me. Bethel. I mean, I could no more than clock in and he's at the whirlpool waiting for me. But I loved it. I thought, wow, this person loves me. It's an amazing feeling. I will take that to my grave with me.
I'm going to ask you, my follow-up question is going to be around the other intangibles that we take home with us from this organization. But before I ask you that, what you said just reminded me of, I think it was my second day doing clinicals, and I was working with a gentleman named Paul, and he hadn't spoken in a long time, and I couldn't know how to get this person. I was interested in I like working with dementia. And so I got a picture of his wife, and that got his eyes a little bit. But you know what I started talking about that got his attention is if his mom made good mashed potatoes.
Oh, I love that.
And he really lightened up talking about he must have remembered his mom making good gravy or something like that.
Isn't that amazing? The things that you're able to bring out in people, you know, we're just people taking care of people, but our journey, our story is what belongs to us. And how cool is it that through healthcare, I've heard so many stories. I've heard them over and over and over again, but each one adds a little different twist to my life. And man, I don't know how people can't just fall in love with that, right?
Yeah, I love hearing stories like what you're sharing, and I take pieces of them and carry them on and pass them on. The one that I learned about a month ago is a gentleman said to me, he goes, "We don't work in healthcare. We're in the human-to-human industry." And I'm like, "Whoa, I've never heard that. That's good. I'm stealing that one."
Yeah, it's true.
So tell me about intangibles. I know that when I'm trying to do my best to make sure we're helping with the staffing crisis right now, it's explaining what's different than the wage. What are the things that make us a better human, a better mom, a better neighbor? What do you take home with you that you think that everyone who's not in our industry needs to understand so they look at us?
Whew, it's a powerful question. I think the thing about healthcare, and you said it, we don't have something that people can touch or feel or manipulate. It's not a product that sits in your hand. It's human life. So what we do when we leave our job is we take the emotions, we take the physicality, the things that occurred to us during that shift, whether it was a good shift or a bad shift, somebody passed away, a new admission came, and we package that all up into one, how do I want to say it, moment that explodes for me when I get home. I can't share, obviously, specific details, but my heart is so full in a good and a bad way, some days, most days, because we have to help people navigate during what they feel is the worst time of their life. And the burden, not burden, that's the wrong word, the weight that we carry on our shoulders, I think people don't realize it doesn't ever go away. It doesn't ever stop. Even when you cross the threshold of your door, in your mind, you're thinking about, could I, should I, would I have done that differently? But most importantly, I think we're in people's lives when they don't know what to do. And we have to be able to say to the world, like, healthcare is more than just a hospital bed or a post-acute bed. It's about taking care of people, regardless of where they are in their healthcare journey, to the end of that journey. That doesn't mean death. That just means wherever they land, we have to still be there. It doesn't stop. And for the rest of the world, it's on pause. You pause when you get home. We don't ever get to pause.
No.
Ever.
My follow-up question to that is what you learned about yourself during COVID. Like some people learned about their stress level. Some learned about what they actually need in life and don't need. Some learned about their pace. Some learned about how they communicate. What did you learn about yourself going through COVID?
I learned how vulnerable I really am. And what I mean by that is, you can get into a routine, and we do that in healthcare. It's your job. You get into a routine and you show up every day and you get your assignment. You work through what you need to get done for each and every one of your residents, regardless of your job. But the vulnerability that we have came to great exposure for me. And I guess it was because I felt like I couldn't do enough. I couldn't be enough. I couldn't be at every one of our buildings helping the staff. And, it was very emotional for all of us. I'm sorry. And I think it's because at our worst time, it just kept coming. And our family members who couldn't have physical contact with their loved one, it made me realize how precious life is. It reminded me of that every single day. And I refuse to regret any of my decisions or anything that I do each and every day. And from that, I can thank COVID.
One of the kind of things that I think that we need to do better in long-term care to get young people looking at us is to talk about the attributes that make a great long-term care frontline caregiver. You were an STNA. So I want to ask you kind of what are the attributes that you look for when you're trying to find those frontline people to take care of your residents?
Yeah, you're right. So my mantra for this year is to reignite fire, reignite passion back into people about healthcare, because it has been very difficult to watch friends of mine, colleagues of mine leave the industry. It's very painful because when we think about healthcare, that impacts essentially every single person on the planet. At some point in your life, you are likely going to need some form of health care, whether that's from your mother who's administering first aid at home, or an acute, serious stay at a hospital that translates into post-acute, and I can keep going. What I think we need to do better for each other is really just the basics. Re-embrace the idea that we are better together, that we alone really can't achieve very much, but together you can do anything. My daughter, who's 3, will be 4, says it best. Mom, it's possible. Anything is possible if you lock arms with the people that you trust, with the people that are not afraid to march that march with you, and recognize how valuable they are. It doesn't matter what you do in healthcare. It takes everybody, and do it with just a little bit of joy and happiness, and it will make your shift, your day so much better. You have to be willing to ignite that fire, that passion into the person standing next to you, and don't take no for an answer.
Beth, the person you just described has a name in your life. So I'm going to ask you to give a shout out either to a frontline caregiver who works in your organization today or some mentor who taught you to express what you just said, because we don't do enough celebrating. We just went through some rough times, and we need to shout out for the people who got us here. Yeah.
So the first person that comes to mind, she's actually here, Bonnie Hall. She is a long-term care administrator, and I worked with her for a number of years. Her children and my children actually ended up going to the same school together. She inspired me to be better. Very young in my career, thought, I'll just do it. I'll just do everything on my own, right? If I just do it, it gets done and it'll be right. She taught me that that's not going to get you anywhere, truly. If you believe that you can only do everything by yourself, you will never grow and learn from other people, and other people will never learn and grow from you. She's an amazing leader. And Peggy Flores, who is a registered nurse, she was my director of nursing at Rose Lane in Massillon, Ohio. My very, very first administrator job, 171 bed building, looking around thinking, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Like, what am I supposed to do here? She was a nice ICU nurse of 35 years. She is a wealth of knowledge, and her ability to teach and lead is unlike any other. She's since retired, but anytime I have a question, she's my first phone
I would
call.
love to interview them.
Oh.
I'd definitely interview Bonnie or Hug. Yeah, that'd
Oh.
be wonderful.
It
I'd love
would
to hear
be
their story.
fantastic.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Before we
Absolutely.
move on to the
Yeah.
rapid fire questions, I want to take a small break and thank our sponsors. Want to connect with leaders in long-term care? Go to www.ltcheroes.com to join our community on Facebook and LinkedIn. Get exclusive access to marketing tips, SOPs, and insights from prominent voices in the industry. Only at ltcheroes.com. And we are back. Thank you. Go look at LTC Heroes community when you have a chance. We want to wrap this up with some rapid fire questions for Beth. You've been a great guest so far.
Thanks.
I appreciate it. Beth, what book or books, what is the book or book given as a gift and why?
Oh.
And it can be recommended as well.
Yeah, I don't know that I have recommended this book, and the author, it escapes me, but it's called The Tipping Point.
Mm-hmm.
And I picked it up when we were on vacation. I needed something to read on the airplane. And as I'm reading this, it was the most amazing real life experience book. It showcased the idea that one person can influence another person who can influence another person, and then at some point you reach that tipping point. Just like if your yellow sneakers that you have on, you start bouncing around wearing them around, and it's like, oh, I love those, and people catch on. It reaches the point where now it becomes a trend. It's reached that tipping point. You can influence people. I love it.
That's
Read it
good.
all the time.
My next question for you, do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Oh.
Something that you thought was going to punch you in the gut and you got up and you're a stronger woman, you're a stronger leader?
Yeah, I will say early on as an administrator, I thought if you just work every day, you be available every day, you're there for your people, you don't ever back down, don't ever take your foot off the gas, you're going to be successful. They're going to work for you and they're going to love working for you. During a performance review, my activity director, I did her review, and at the end, I always like to say, what do you need from me? What am I not doing for you? What can I do differently? I think most supervisors do that. She took a big breath because I could tell she was not sure she wanted to say this to me. And she said, Beth, I got to tell you, I feel like your passion is exhausting.
Ooh.
And I had to sit back and I said, I don't know what that means. Like, I'm there for you. And I started rattling off all these things. She says, stop. While we love you, while we appreciate the fact that you want this building to be the best because you want the res, I know that's in your heart. You have to realize that not everybody has the ability to work like you do.
Mm.
And it was this idea that I was micromanaging my team. I will never forget that moment, and it completely changed the way that I led from that moment on.
I feel like you were speaking to me as well. I need to check with my team. Amelia, who's helping on the backside, I feel like she could say that to me if she felt comfortable. I need to be careful with the passion. I'm glad you shared that.
Yes.
Thank you for being vulnerable.
Well, because you just naturally think, if I just ooze positivity and passion, everybody's going to want to be around me.
No.
You got to allow people to showcase their strengths and listen. And I didn't do that. I did after that moment, and I thanked her profusely. To this day, I thank her randomly via text messages.
That's great. My last rapid fire question for you is, if you could have a gigantic billboard anywhere with anything on it that millions of people would see over the course of 6 months or a year, what would it say and why?
Oh, I have so many things that I would want it to say, but I think maybe the change the moment, not the world.
Wow.
Because, we're responsible for our actions in that moment. We can't expect to understand how people are going to respond or what they do. What I'm in control of is how I respond. So if I change this moment, I can impact somebody's life.
That's powerful.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I'm glad that we met. Thanks to Kathy and thanks to Heidi from Ohio Healthcare Association for the introduction. It was great having you on here. Look forward to seeing you around the showroom and hopefully see you next year.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Bye-bye. This episode of LTC Heroes is brought to you by Experience Care, the only long-term care software developed by EHR users and clinicians every step of the way. Visit experience.care/guarantee
to get your free profitability consultation today.